We say, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's indeed good to be back and have another opportunity.
Right.
Realizing that the Lord is still good and
Yeah.
He still blesses us
That's right.
every day.
Yeah.
We just owe Him thanks and honor. We are going to Columbia this morning. Our secretary this morning told me last night she wouldn't be able to be here, so I asked Sister Brenda if she would sit in for it. She said so, and we thank her. We like Columbia. Got a good lesson this morning.
All right.
A matter of the heart. And as I studied this passage all week, I reflected on our world and humanity. The world has a hard problem,
Yeah.
a hard condition.
Yeah.
We're going to see in this lesson how Paul is addressing this condition. It's called circumcision. Circumcision of the heart. Our lesson this morning comes from Romans 2nd chapter, 12 through 24, 28, 29. King James Version reads as follows. For as many as have sinned without law shall also perish without law. And as many as have sinned in the law shall be judged by the law. For not the hearers of the law are just before God, but the doers of the law shall be justified. For when the Gentiles which have not the law do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the means while accusing else excusing one another. In the day when God shall judge the secrets of men by Jesus Christ according to my gospel. Behold, thou art called a Jew, and restest in the law, and makest thy boast of God, and knowest his will, and approvest the things that are more excellent, being instructed out of the law, and art confident that thou thyself art a guide of the blind, a light of them which are in darkness, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of babes, which hath the form of knowledge and of the truth in the law. Thou therefore which teachest another, teachest not thyself. Thou that preachest a man should not steal, doest thou steal. Thou that sayest a man should not commit adultery, doest thou commit adultery. Thou that abhorrest idols, doest thou commit sacrilege. Thou that makest thy boast of the law, through breaking the law, dishonor thou God. For the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles through you, as it is written. For he is not a Jew which is one outwardly, neither that circumcision which is outward in the flesh. But he is a Jew which is one inward, and circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God. Our key verse, Romans 2 and 29. For he is a Jew, which is one inward, and circumcision is that of the heart in the spirit, and not in the letter, whose praise is not of men, but of God. Romans 2 and 29. Now we'll ask Mr. Krause, you don't mind do our lesson introduction.
Morning, class.
Good morning.
Morning, class.
Good morning.
All right, y'all. Intro. There's a word that plagues many churches, judgment. In our faith walk, we are taught to embody the words of love and to follow the law according to what Jesus commands. As believers, it is our duty to not to only serve our fellow humans, but we as believers also must do so in the language of love. However, in many cases, we do the exact opposite. In church and even in our personal spaces, we tend to embrace the work in language of judgment, in language of pride, in the language of selfishness. They become etched on our hearts. And because of our actions, we turn away from the church, the very people we charge to love. Could that be the reason why the faithful struggle in sharing our faith and why many are turned off from church? Could it be that we use the very law and gospel as tools to make us appear superior to others rather than for doing the work of justice, love, and mercy? What does it look like to actually keep the law in our hearts and not have a secret agenda? What does it look like to embrace the law in our hearts and do the work of love that is transformative?
We thank Mr. Perry for that introduction. Those last two questions, that's a big question.
Yeah.
What does it look like to actually keep the law in our hearts and not have a secret agenda? Listen now. Listen. To actually keep the law in our hearts and not have a secret agenda. See, that's what was happening, Pastor, with the Jews. They had a secret agenda.
All right.
They couldn't even uphold the law, but they wanted to hold everybody else to it.
Good, yeah.
And what does it look like to embrace the law in our hearts and do the work of love that is transformative? It's all about the love in your heart.
All right. All right.
The Jews, we know the story. They were given the law first, and then it was given through the Jews to the Gentiles, to us. It asks a question in the introduction here. It's a pretty unique scenario. It says, once rare and dangerous, various types of heart surgery are now common. Included are minimally invasive keyhole procedures. You know what they can do with the heart? They can go in there, do a key procedure, and you're out in a day. Listen now. Where small incisions are made and repairs involve tiny cameras and robot-assisted tools. The ultimate heart surgery is the heart transplant. Listen, listen. But in Paul's day, the necessity of the heart for human survival was recognized. But surgical repairs to a heart were unknown. But it is ironic then that Paul unknowingly anticipated some of the wonders of modern medicine when he wrote of a spiritual heart surgery. Listen now. But Junior, a spiritual heart surgery. That's what the world is missing.
That's right.
Spiritually, people walking around just in the best health they think they are. Heart messed up. Spiritually heart surgery. Listen. Which he calls the circumcision of the heart. We read this many times, we've studied. The circumcision of the heart. This lesson explores what Paul meant by this curious choice of words. We're going to get into it as we progress through this. Paul addressed the implication of the circumcision issue at length in the book of Galatians. But he also did so in Romans 2, which is our today's lesson. Look at our first verse, verse 12. The just judgment, with or without the law. Listen what it says now. For as many as have sinned without law shall also perish without law. And as many as have sinned in the law shall be judged by the law. That says a lot now. It takes a little bit to digest that. But see, a way to express the distinction between Jews and Gentiles in Paul's day was to say that Jews were in the law. That's the way it was. Jews were in the law, while Gentiles were without law. In other words, the Gentiles didn't have the same privilege that the Jews had.
Right.
They were without the law. The law that Paul had in mind was given by God through Moses for the nation of Israel. The law of Moses. The first 5 books of the Old Testament are called the Pentateuch, embodied this law. The Jews knew this law very well. It was the basis for their faith, having been studied and practiced for centuries. Yet they had knowingly broken that law, and they could not avoid being judged according to those violations. Listen now, the Gentiles, for their part, have not been given this special revelation of law from God. Even so, established that Gentiles could not escape judgment by pleading ignorance. See, Pastor? Wasn't no excuse. There's no excuse. Even though the Jews had it first, God has said they're not going to be exempt, the Gentiles, us. Verse 13, hearers are doers. For not the hearers of the law are just before God, but the doers of the law shall be justified. You see, faithful keeping of the law was more than merely having and being acquainted with it, which would amount to being nothing more than, listen now, hearers of the law. Justification came from being doers of the law. That's the key. We can be doers. We can be hearers, but we got to be doers.
Yeah.
Doers. That's key. To be justified, in this sense, means to be free from penalty for breaking the law. See, that's where Christ came in. We are free from penalty because Christ died for all of us.
Yeah.
Jews and Gentiles, black and white. He died for all of us. So that did away with the penalty. He is the penalty, Christ. Verse 14 says, for when the Gentiles which have not It's all about truth. God puts it in us.
But like I say, you talk on your experience, and I can only talk on my experience. In no
the power of sin. That's why the Jews were messing them up at. They would tell them they could uphold the law. No, you